Thank you, Chair. Also, just to perhaps thank the CEO.
Just project your work a little bit more. There's people online as well.
To thank the CEO for welcoming us to this institution. We very much appreciate being part of this esteemed gathering. Of course, for distinguished guests, Abalimi Benzangu, the important people here today, industry experts and policymakers. We want to also give special recognition to the rest of the community, without which we really wouldn't be here today. So respectfully, I'm going to be more than 10 minutes. If you combine myself and this, like I said, it'll be slightly over, but not too much.
No, it's fine. As long as you give us, in whatever limited time you've got, main messages. No?
Absolutely.
Otherwise, again, if I look at the time now, it's already, people have been here since 9:30, 11:30. They want to input, they want to make suggestions. Sure. We've been on this road for a long time.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
My name is Sigcau. I'm a member of the Governoral family, the eastern part of Portland. As you will know, Portland is split between east and west. In fact, the ECRDA ECO is blessed to have Inkosazana, Felpagame, Ndamasa Bagbord, or Simtiploileyo Alpha. So, in Portland, Insan is livelihood. Let's not look at it as anything else. It's livelihood. And I think the reason why we're here today is to discuss how to then ensure that that livelihood in all its facets benefits the people who depend on it. We have renowned strains, of course, Mapondweni, which unfortunately we have not yet accrued the benefit of, because as the conversation was heard earlier, and you'll see as it builds, these strains form part of now modified offerings which sit in other places of the world, strengthened by our source material. And this is a conversation that we want to build on. Just to name a few, we have Isnange, we have Igyagya, we have TK, we've got Uhlagata, which reminds me of Isenem, we've got one Notu. So these really originally come from Ponderland. Not licenses yet, but we are driving towards that. There's a conference that was held recently by the Ponderland Cannabis Belt Association. We have, Chair, been invited as traditional leadership to sit in the advisory committee there. So we're not part of the association, but we perform an oversight function, which we are very happy to fulfill as part of course, as the broader role that we play as traditional leadership. But before I delve into the discussion, I've been tasked by the association and the chairperson of it, Mr. Malambo Lamini, to express a word of appreciation, Chair, for firstly, the Port St. John's municipality, who hosted the conference of the association as a host municipality, the Ortambo district, for ensuring that we all ate during those days. Of course, some of us, it's a matter of priority that happens. And then the ECRDA, led by board chairperson, Dr. Mapazi, for both the financial contribution and material support. As you can see, the reason why we're here today is, of course, by the warm invitation of the ECRDA. It's a relationship with value. We had Mr. Gardstrachen as a special guest during the conference, and Dr. Blow, of course, who was as project manager of the Cannabis Conference, leading on behalf of, the Cannabis project within the ECRDA, leading on behalf of the ECRDA. Board chairperson, however, there's a small matter of importance. Mr. Strachen, Dr. Blau, were given 3 gifts during the conference. The first gift was inyama, which is important and traditional, but they get inyama on arrival. The second gift, they were given beverages of a certain variety. They got those beverages and they received them. There's a small matter that remains, where they were given customary wives. which they left behind. So I've been asked the girls, but by eating but on a more serious note, today I've been invited, of course, by the ECRDA to talk on two facets, which is traditional leadership and as well as the matter of indigenous growers. And Mahlagato, of course, will expand on the indigenous growers. But maybe just before I get there, I just want to explain maybe the role of traditional leadership, such that all of us have a sense of why it's important that we play the role that we play within the context of Pondoland. So the Constitution requires that really within our areas of jurisdiction that we manage these four items. The first one is cultural matters. Second one is administrative within, of course, the wards and the areas that we manage as traditional leaderships. We also play a role of managing and facilitating development on behalf of communities and coordination. So coordination, of course, this talks to government, this talks to social groups, it talks to, of course, even private partnerships. So we have quite a lot to do as traditional leadership. But the reason why maybe we don't come out and look like people who are leading is because by nature, traditional leadership is supposed to sit in the background and not have a knee-jerk reaction. All the time. And this is important because as you see the evolution of developments, you don't want to be the guy that first pronounced things change and then you're caught in between what you thought was the truth and what has happened. So it's an important almost stance that we take to observe. And I think this is important in the context of this whole cannabis industry development. To take you through then what we've done to date, because we're not just passive, we attend. 2017, of course, was the decriminalization of cannabis, and we were, as part of the cannabis stakeholders, quite excited for growers within our communities. On the 2019th, the Eastern Cape hosted a conference. Both King Zanuzuko Star at the time and King Damase were in attendance. In fact, this is where I met this powerhouse during those times. And I'm so glad that we meet here today. 2020, we chaired the traditional growers meeting as a Bukumgani Bumambo, on the way Bukumgani Zanuzuko rejected the private bill, saying that it was not consultative. And of course, it was silent on matters that mattered to traditional growers. So we actually responded and we, it's recorded what our views were there. Then in 2021, the National Cannabis Master Plan came, and CEO, it spoke to localization really and building an industry from the local context. So Nkumgani then at the time was quite excited. I say at the time because sadly he has since passed away, to say that this is now a move towards the right direction, especially considering that the only thing that's going to differentiate us from the global cannabis community is us embracing what is uniquely local. So we saw and still believe that the master plan is an opportunity for us to now use a program that has been set up to then thrust local farmers into the mainstream of the economy, similar to what Labat, Mr. Van Roy had communicated earlier. In 2021, also, we had a massive engagement in the Wild Coast Sun, and I say massive in the sense that it involved traditional leadership, it involved government at the highest level, where the president came to address the two kings of Pondoland, King Sigcau and King Damase. I had the privilege, when I brought chairperson, to lead those discussions on behalf of both kings. And during that time, the president committed, we didn't even prompt this discussion, but the president committed to one thing. He said a cannabis industry will be developed Emambondweni for the benefit of the Eastern Cape. Emambondweni for the benefit of the province. And I think we'll talk to why that is significant for us. So 2023 sees something quite exciting for us, where the Pondoland Cannabis Belt Association has been set up. It's 8 district municipalities who come together under one unity and purpose to say that they want to build an industry. And they've elected a structure, and this structure is really recognized by us as traditional leadership as the mouthpiece or voice for traditional growers within the area. So we see this as progress, stellar progress. So cannabis in Poundland doesn't sit as an island on its own. It sits within the context of South Africa or Africa as a continent. By that, I mean we sit within the context of historical colonization, which has, of course, led to slavery, oppression and segregation that followed more closer to home by way of the apartheid era, where there was a clear agenda, which is to exclude the black man from economic activity in all shapes and forms. Then the homeless system was developed, and I see the homeless system as where really the cannabis industry within Ponderland and really in other parts really of South Africa, it took shape. Now, what do I mean by this? I can share a story, for example, of the then King and President Sigcau, where he consciously took a decision to turn a blind eye to cannabis growers because he knew that his people depended on it for a livelihood. So this is where you now started seeing our variants of cannabis make their way into other parts of South Africa. But however, Board Chairperson, the issue here is that, and this is where we need to slow down the conversation, especially when it comes to the policymakers. Much as Ponderland then was active and was able to feed markets, the practical reality is that we were still working within the context of an apartheid regime, where trade of cannabis was under strict prohibition. So if you're a cannabis grower, you are harassed, you are humiliated, and you experience various forms of hurt through gross human rights violations. And you also are criminalized by a system really that you are not part of creating rules for. So for us, this period is important to mention before we forge ahead with these beautiful laws which are imposed in most respects. Mm-hmm. But we need to go back and realize that we are talking to a people that have been hurt significantly. I'll detail, for example, a typical farmer's experience. And of course, I say this as someone in farming. Farming is hard, it's not easy. But in the context of cannabis, ulimile, and ulima kwakho, you are afraid, because immediately when your neighbor sees you, they are going to tell the authorities, you know. In our communities back then, the word insang was even called or made to sound like a swear word. Then you overcome that, and you move on, and your crop starts growing, and you've got hope that within the context of that season, you'll put food on the table. And one afternoon, you hear a noise which you hadn't heard before. It's a helicopter flying over your crop, spraying your crop. The material that they spray not only destroys the cannabis, but it also destroys the crop that you are going to feed your children with. Your hope is trashed. But then within certain areas, because Ponderland is vast, it's Nendaba, we're hidden. And this is why we are the ideal place for growing this thing. So certain community members, certain communities are able to forge ahead and trade, and they get to markets. But on their route to markets, they get arrested. So there's no winning effectively for a very long time. What then happens is that that person goes back into their community, they're alienated, they're vilified, they're called a trader of Inzam. This is the hurt that we are talking to, that government needs to take seriously. You know, I'm hearing all these fascinating discussions about a sandbox. So to get in a payment bond, the box is at this moment. Because literally, we see the weight of it and its potential, but we'll talk to that in a moment. So, CEO, this thing has resulted in one thing, is that this industry for decades has been one I can call one premise on a fight or fright psychology. So you're fighting for survival on the one hand, but you also know, Che, that anything could possibly happen. So as they say, is doing all the time. And as we make these reforms, we need to realize that trust has been destroyed. So if you're talking and you're sitting in Gauteng and you call people and you expect them to understand these fancy concepts and terms, when you haven't addressed the real issues that affect them emotionally and psychologically, you still haven't done anything. So this is the most important thing for us here. in discussing with Dr. Blow, he had indicated that I should talk to the indigenous growers, but unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to do that because there is now elected structure. And I'd like to say that this lady next to me is much prettier than somebody who can talk on behalf of growers. So to just maybe continue with this part of the discussion, and then I will close up at the end. Thank you.
Ndiyazibulisela kumntu wonke apha endlini.
That's fine.
Thanks to
You want to come sit here?
Yeah. Siyabulela eneneni ngokubana sibe lapha phakathi kwenu namhlanje. Nangentsebenziswano njengoba seyibekile ufaka ukuzofikelela kule ndawo esikuyo. My name is Phila Sande Mahlakatha. I'm originally from Etsolo. I do live in Mampondweni. I have lived there for a very long time. I have had a great opportunity to work or to become part of an organization that started talking about cannabis-related issues and treatment way before we were able to sit around on round tables and discuss what we are going to do to make money about it. We have been through the fight of fighting the police from spraying, and as a result, they have not returned in more than 5 or 6 years. I am marveling at your presentation, Wena Tami, and the similarities that we have between us in the classification that has become a cannabis, hemp, and then everybody says it's the same thing. All of the things that we are listing as the things that are your plans and the things that you need to make a way ahead. For some of us, maybe it's a thing that lingers, that come by every now and again, we discuss, but we are actually not so sure what direction what to take or how to go about taking it because of everything that's been mentioned, everything that has been an experience that we cannot overlook. So I would like to say it is all very similar. It is all very same. Imagine all of the things that a hemp a farmer might be able to get right now because they're in a position to apply for a permit and be permitted to cultivate because it is under the Department of Agriculture as an agricultural crop. Everything that they need is everything that a Dacha farmer needs, but a Dacha farmer is not able to go through the same permit application that would allow them to research. And it is a problem because on the other hand, it looks like the path is greener and more open. And on the other hand, for the people who've been involved in it for generations, who've been anticipating and eagerly waiting to get to a point where we say, all right, here we go, let's make magic happen. And those are the people that are still sitting in the back and still watching everybody else bask in the glory of a developing industry. Singabalimi becuba elihlaza asisohlukanga kubalimi bezinye indidi zokudla namayeza emveliso. Abalimi baye badibane ngezizathu in their commodities befuna mhlawumbe ukucebisana, ukubonisana, ukuncedisana forging a way ahead. Nathi singabalimi bomya emampondweni, we have had various occasions where we have met, whether it's through conferences that are called by maybe the agency, the various departments, government, and so on, and have been observing an ongoing frustration that's recurring because the conversation is not the kind of conversation we are wanting to have. We then decided, let's face our problems head on. First and foremost, get together, formalize ourselves as an organization of farmers and present our issues to each other and not dwell on our issues, but forge a way ahead. Hence the birth of this Abalimi Bomia Association that has become a part of Impondoland in its whole, because it now includes all of 9 communities, including Imatatie. And also, this was a reaction from an ongoing poor consultation when it comes to trying to find the farmers, trying to address the farmers, trying to put them in the picture of what they can and cannot do at the time. The over-promising on what the industry is about to do. The numbers, the billions, the trillions, very frustrating for somebody sitting down the valley. And for some, they don't even get that information because they are not properly consulted for them to be able to gain the information that they need to make their way ahead. Since privacy ruling 2018, there hasn't been much movement at all, except for all of these talks and so on. So we're very grateful ukuthi sifikelela ekubeni ngoku sibe siyakwazi to have a relationship with the agency and even propose ukusebenzisana and to go home hopeful ukubana perhaps maybe the tide is changing. Ukulima ukuthi indeed is a traditional practice. Sabelana ngolwazi, and this is what we have come to term as indigenous knowledge systems. Information is generational. Ugogo may be too old on her own, going back and forth the field, and they might make use of abantwana aba balapha endlini, as with any other situation emakhaya. Pick this up, clean that up, do it like this, put it in the soil, water it now. Information that is moving generationally. And we are a little bit worried that it might not be respected enough. The fact that it's a family commitment, it's a community commitment. Sinezinto apho akuqhutywayo sibanelima. It's a traditional practice from day one, from planting the seed, from giving each other the seed. Siyatshintshiselana ngembewu like we do with intanga, nombona, and so on. And kuba khona some worrying things that keep coming up every now and again in things like the proposed cannabis bill, whereby ECT, keep it away from your children, don't let them see it, don't let them consume it. Meanwhile, the generational information that we have allows us to make a point that we have been sent to sithunyiwe silapha nje. Kuhlelwe phansi kwadiscusswa kwathiwa nizafane pha, because asifuni uba niyiphose le opportunity yokubana nithethe ngakasa into ezawubuya isenzele ukutshintsha. Silapha ngelo themba ke lokubana lukhona utshintsho, siyaluva kunjalo nje. Ndicela ukuzifunda some of the points, the way that they were delivered to us, and we were asked to ukuthi sizitsho. Kuthiwa emambondweni sicela for the Dagga Belt to be given the status it deserves, to consider the history and the future of this plant as a whole, to prioritize the traditional farmers as a dominant force for the global industry. For Impondoland to use the same models as the grape farmers in the Western Cape winelands and the KZN sugarcane producers for cannabis, for processing to be done in Impondoland, for a diversity of products to come out of Impondoland. We are not trying to be a standalone community with our set of rules or special concession like the Ngonyama Trust or even Orania. We want to be part of creating an enabling environment based on our indigenous knowledge. We are seeking a reciprocal partnership between us as a community and the government. We want to acknowledge and respect the law and regulations regarding the development of a sustainable dagga industry, but it becomes a problem if it infringes on our rights, if it is a problem if it continues to enable poverty into our communities, and as a result, this always results in lack of cooperation between parties and incites retaliation, as this is always a natural response to subjudication in any living organism. Imbonaland Dagga Belt is known all over the world for its potency and medicinal properties. This is what we want to capitalize on. In the same way as maize, beef, and many other commodities and high-value crops, imakethe ihlala ithathwa ngabantu abamhlophe, thina siqale siqashwe ngabo siphelele ekubeni sibe singabaqeshwa ngabo. Every time you go everywhere around the country, there are dagga shops and clubs for the benefit of few. Nalena imakethe isebantwini abamhlophe ongowankulu. The opportunity that we could also partake in, but we do not entirely understand how we can be, because we have a fear and a trauma of being labeled as criminals. So while other people are going ahead and doing their shops and posing as if they're selling fertilizer and nicely pushing their weed and so on, we would also like to be in that position. We want to preserve our land-race genetics. We want to promote our dagga, the dagga that we have inherited from our forefathers. We wish to establish what different strains we have and what potential they are. This may also help to guide the farmers into new markets or new markets that we can get into or that we are currently getting into. We want to declare our land-race strains as medicinal plant that also perform as an industrial plant, much like the hemp plant. We want to heighten the value of our crop. We do not want singular permits or licenses, but rather a license that will be under the custodianship of Amakosi for the purpose of serving the entire community. We want to be part of creating the programs that will kickstart the industrialization of cannabis. We would like for government to provide an educational initiative for cannabis for Mbondoland traditional farmers to exchange knowledge, to learn, and this is not enough initiative. There is not enough initiative for dagga awareness in general. IKS recognition is an integral part of honoring the legacy farmers and for the role that they have played over the generations. We want to be in a position to share our knowledge as much as we want to learn all that we do not know. And we want to be able to give training much as we would love to receive training. It should be a give and take. And for all of that to happen, we need to have dialogues. We need to have platforms to communicate, because a lot is happening just from carelessly making laws or passing things that then government doesn't follow up on. For instance, I would like to make an example about the privacy ruling that got passed in 2018. That was a major turnaround for a lot of people and got a lot of people excited. But still, for the legacy farmer down the valley, it meant zero, because they still remain in the same position. For government to be in a position to say, I am now passing this law, if there wasn't proper consultation, it's going to become a problem and we are never going to go anywhere. A lot of things erupt from that. There's a lot of disagreements between people. Siyaxabana sisodwa, abanye bathi yay, hemp, yay, intsangu. A lot of confusion that is just totally unnecessary. And this is because of just nje ukuba khelesi in how we do things. Mhlawumbi nokungaqondi ukubana kule ndawo sikuyo masithetheni njengabantu. Sikwazini ukucaciselana ukubana uhlanga olu silulo siyaphi nalo nezinto esinazo apha ngoku emhlabeni wethu ezandleni zethu. Ndithatha itota yethiphe kagqiba incama andazi noba kuthiwa mandipheze nangoku. Kodwa ndiyacela sifikelele ukudistigmatizer iplanti tata. It has taken over 100 years ukuprohibitha iplant noku-exercise zonke ezi zinto zibuhlungu bezithethwa apha. Nathi ezingqondweni nomakhulu bethu ubana ndithi ngoku mhlawumbi ndibhaqwe ndisithi yho yingxaki enkulu because ayifani noba ndibhaqwe mhlawumbi ndirhabula into okanye nditshaya isigarethi. Somehow ezinye izinto zivumelekile kwisociety yethu no matter how much harm they cause. Akho mntu uregulator uba elounge xa nihleli kwenu bantwana mabangabikho xa nitshaya icuba okanye xa nisela utywala because bazawuphinda ba-observe ii-actions ezizawusukela from consuming whatever drug that has been consumed. And kukhona ingxaki emane ivela ethi, let's move away from smoking. We are continuing to destigmatize the plant. Let's welcome the plant for what it is. Abanye bayayitshaya. For that matter, siqale ukuyazi uba intsangu yenza impahla inoba 7 years ago. Ebunyanisweni at a large scale. Nangona ke omamthami baba nenyweba yokubana banikwe i-opportunity yoyitriala back in the day. But imarket esiyaziyo iyi-1 yile yoba umakhulu uyatshaya irasta lisuke eLimpopo lizothenga lihambe lothengisela abanye butshaya kube mandi. So iyafuna ke ngokubana sisondelele ukuthi how are we going to do things right? How are we going to make things right? Awareness. Bazondixolela abantu bakuthi uba ikhona endizitshiyileyo zininzi ziyincwadi singabhala incwadi.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pilar Sande. I think that was a mouthful presentation. I think those that are online, there is a change of the driver. The other driver is just on break for 20 to 25 minutes. So I'm going to be driving this bus for now. My name is Nkosi Kovila. I work for ECRDA, for those that are online and also those that are inside. I think this is the time now for questions. Sorry. Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, sorry, Prince. Just close again.
The next 2 slides, as Kolmula CEO, siphathisiwe njengobetsheli kuyabacela kumangidlulisa le myalezo by the association. The association is preparing to table a list of demands to the state president, which they hope he considers before elections. The association demands, in essence, that a declaration of a Bondoland legacy hub be considered by the president. And the structure of that hub should be as follows. It should first be led by the total repeal and expungement of criminal records of those that are arrested for trading cannabis. It should focus on the full value chain participation of Pondo people, cultivation all the way up to production and processing. It should give them an undiluted ownership of all components that make up this value chain, including means of production. There should be a clear special dispensation in recognition of historic atrocities committed to the Fonderland legacy cannabis growers. There should be a clear and decided funding commitment towards the building of an industry as described above. So the association has said then that they are inviting the respectable office of the president to consider these demands And they're hoping to hear the murmurs of the discussions shortly after the January 8th statement by the ruling party. The venue is said to be Mampondweni on the 15th of January in the new year. As I close off, Board Chairperson, I want to perhaps talk to something I've called the Umhlasanya effect as it relates to the sandbox and the information exchange, the importance of the information exchange. There was a building that was built. Fortunately, I can talk to this, but Yakiwa, Ekaugen, it was built for 20 million rand. It was supposed to be something that would benefit, of course, that would use freely, trade and all manner of things. Now, in the construction of this project, there was a labor rotation that was built into it. Some days the ladies would work, other days the youth would work, and other days, of course, elderly people would work. But on this particular day, a Superlink truck arrives loaded with bricks. And unfortunately, that particular day, Amambondogas were working, the Bandians. And then the next instruction that was given by the foreman at the time was that Shisanas was dead.
Sure.
So I call him upon the guys. Oh, Umhlasanya. Now, what this talks to is the importance of information exchange, such that when you are talking these wonderful concepts that are supposed to benefit us, beware they don't have the Umhlasanya effect because you haven't consulted us. Like nothing for us without us. Let me share up again.